is your psycho ex story? Alright, so I broke up with a girl. I use the term broke up with loosely because I thought we were friends with benefits and she took it a little more serious. Anyways, she said that she was pregnant. I know, only a little crazy, but she maintained this for about 9 months. She would send me pictures of ultrasounds, and after the baby was born, she'd send pictures of her breastfeeding and in little outfits. She maintained all of this until the baby was about a week old, and I asked for the paperwork to have the kid added to my benefits and a DNA test. Once I tried to do what I thought was the right thing, despite my freaking the F out, it came out that it was her friend's baby. That girl was effing nuts. The TLDR is crazy sorta ex pretended she was pregnant and made someone else's baby sick on her titties to convince me she had my baby. Then I had another girl who was into ass-to-mouth stuff, and well, one day she decided now's a good time to suck his poop pecker and proceeded to immediately spit something out and go back at it. It sounded like she was spitting out a watermelon seed. In the moment, I didn't think much of it, but after the lights came on, there was a piece of brown lettuce stuck to the wall. I ended up having to repaint it so I wouldn't stop seeing it. Okay, so that was like top 10 craziest ways to start a video, right? Because what the hell? We just started. I just sat down, Quagmire. Oh my god, this is gonna be entertaining, won't it? Anyway, next story. So not my ex, but I had a huge crush on one of my friends. She had recently broken up with her boyfriend, mutual since they were both graduating and going separate ways, so I thought I might have a chance with her. We started talking more, and eventually she told me a secret. She left some stuff at her ex's house and asked to go get it. She told him it would be too hard seeing him again and asked him to leave the place unlocked. Then she brought her mom and 2 sisters along and stole everything of value and trashed the guy's house. Smashed all of the windows, cut up the sofa, kicked holes in the walls. She told him it was like that when she got there and that it must have been burglars since he left it unlocked. She wasn't mad about the breakup or anything, just thought it would be fun. Her and I are no longer friends, and I really regret not tracking him down to tell him what she did. Next story. A guy that used to hit me for no reason. Never on the face though, always on the body or legs. Most days he was fine, some days he just lost his temper for the most trivial reasons. One that comes to mind was me sitting upstairs playing PS2 in the bedroom. We had a few broken floorboards up there, and they were beside where I was sitting on the chair, so it made a noise any time I moved ever so slightly. We both knew about this and knew it needed fixed. Anyway, he came upstairs and started yelling at me for banging on the floor, then flipped the chair over and I ended up on my back, still in the chair with a cut hand. I was going through a kind of crappy time in life, so I let the stuff go on way longer than I should have, and just convinced myself it was my fault somehow. Looking back, it really wasn't my fault. The day I moved out of that place was pretty liberating. Next story. Multiple brief stories about the same guy. We were on and off for 5 years. After him becoming super controlling for the last year, going through my phone, following me to work and school to see if I was actually there, so on, he broke up with me, and I realized enough was enough and I wouldn't take him back. I started dating my best friend shortly after, and the following transpired from the day we broke up until now. It's been 5 years. 1. Shows up at my at-the-time boyfriend's house, peeks in through the windows of all the rooms, including my boyfriend's 3-year-old's room, looking for me. Used to drive by late at night, park his car a street over to watch for me. 2. Left a bag full of condoms and sex toys, not mine, on boyfriend's front step with a note saying, "Have fun with your hoe." 3. Posted my nudes and Facebook profile link with my phone number on 4chan. 4. Bought the house across the street from me and would tap on my window at 3 to 4 a.m. every morning. 5. I was sitting outside my house with a friend and he showed up at the driver's side window waving a gun around threatening to shoot us. 6. Showed up at my house with a gun and said he was going to kill me and then himself. 7. I finally had him Baker acted and he talked himself out of it and then called me to come get him. 8. Would send me videos of him self-harming. 9. Still randomly calls me confessing love for me and says if he doesn't wake up to me in 10 years, he's gonna take his own life. 10. Harasses my friends when he sees them in public, asking them to talk to me and convince me he loves me. He's married and has 2 kids. I will never be free. Next story. In my senior year of high school, I had an ex wait in front of my house for an hour. She thought I was home, so she kept ringing my doorbell. So I came home from practice and saw her bawling her eyes out, begging me to take her back. I, of course, said no. She was kind of a cliche, so she threatened to take her own life and tell all of my friends she was pregnant with my child. I laughingly told her to F off. This is where I saw a side of her I had no idea existed. Because this 5'2" chick gets in boxer stance and puts her fists up, ready to brawl. I was stunned, so she takes a swing at my face and misses the first time. I didn't have it in me to harm a pregnant, wanting to self-unalive 17-year-old, so I start backing off. I try to get inside my house when she jumps up on my back piggyback style, trying to choke me out and take me down. I'm not afraid to admit I was getting my ass kicked, but I finally break free and get inside my house, and that was the last time I saw her. And she ended up keeping true to her threats. Told all of my friends she was preggers. Jesus effing Christ, what an effing headache. Left me a scar to remember me for all of our good times. Next story. My last girlfriend, on 2 separate occasions, got drunk and fell down on the street. One time busting her bottom lip open during heated drunk arguments and screaming, he hit me, and help, he's beating me. Well, I tried to help her up. I've never been violent with a partner in my life. I stayed with this person for almost 2 years, the most emotionally abusive relationship I've ever been in. After we broke up, she continued to tell people that I had actually hit her, until I shared screenshots of a combo we had when we were together of her admitting it was all a lie told in the heat of a drunken argument. But even then, my current partner tells me that women are still warning her of my history of abuse, and I very rarely go out to bars or pubs anymore. Next story. Dated a super manipulator. Lied the entire time we dated. Found out she cheated on me with her boss. That was what started to peel away her false exterior. Soon after, I found out that she was addicted to painkillers when I had to miss work to go to pick her up from her job, where she had a seizure. Found out eventually she took a mystery pill she found. And her excuse for using pills? She claimed to have miscarried and couldn't cope. Hint, hint, she wasn't pregnant. She was never pregnant. Then found out the boss wasn't an isolated incident. She was also effing my neighbor. Randoms from the internet. Had a 55-year-old sugar daddy and an ex-con who was giving her free pills, then would routinely cause fights with me and attack me physically, and due to her small stature, 4'10", I had no choice but to leave when it would happen, so she would self-harm to get me not to, then signed me up for joint credit cards without my permission, then maxed them to the tune of $10,000 USD. But the final straw was when I finally got some distance from her, and she broke into my house to steal my dogs and smashed some family heirlooms, called the police, and she just openly started punching me in the face in their presence. Got a no trespass order. Then she married the ex-con who is back in prison, and this absolved me somehow of the debt, I think. Either way, it disappeared. Edit. I've decided to clarify some things real quick. I did indeed find out that the miscarriage was a fabrication. The dogs were never taken or harmed successfully. Jerry and Reggie are currently looking at me from the foot of the bed waiting for their food. However, I was left with a pair of cats she wanted, who were never vetted and thus started a kitten factory. When I finally got the trespass order, guess who lived just far enough to not break the order? That's right, the neighbor she was screwing. Guess who let her stay? Same effing guy. Well, I guess I got his in the end. Well, kind of. We had a litter of 8 kittens yet to be weaned. When I got rid of her, it was her crutch to stay in contact. She insisted she had homes all lined up and couldn't renege on them, so I gave her the 8 kittens. Well, I found out recently she never rehomed them all, just 1 or 2. She dumped the other 6 on the neighbor. The neighbor then got fed up and threw all of the kittens in the surrounding woods. I still see a stray or 2 around the neighborhood, but they're very skittish and I haven't been able to do anything about them. The kicker is, I got the blame by other neighbors. The cats ended up having a second litter of 8 and then surrendered to AHS. Then it was pointed out she may have been bipolar/mentally ill, and she was prescribed Prozac by her HCP. Why? I don't know, but the prescription ran out and she had to see him again, and I know he recommended she saw a psychiatrist, but I don't think she ever did. Edit number 2. For clarification, she fabricated the miscarriage story, which I obviously tried to be compassionate about, which is why I put up with all of this bullcrap for as long as I did. Next story. While he and I were together back in 2007 to 2007, he manipulated me into thinking that I wasn't worth much without him. Every chance he had, he brought me down a peg or two. Basically taught me that my opinion didn't matter to him, and he was clearly the man in charge. After a breakup, together for a little less than a year, he called me constantly from the bars. Seriously, about 10 calls an hour he averaged. If I didn't pick up, he'd call repeatedly until I did, and leave voicemails. He would say things like, "I'm so much happier without you," while on the phone with me. Or he'd call and ask me to get back together with him. I said no each time. The final straw was after the breakup. He still had his stuff at my apartment, which was in a gated community. I was going to drop it off at his friend's house later the next day. He showed up at the complex, stood outside my window for I don't know how long, and proceeded to call me until about 12:30 a.m. I am dead asleep, but the call wakes me up. I naively let him in to get his stuff, and he didn't leave right away. Instead of attempting to get back with him, he tried for an hour. I stayed my ground and said no. Once he realized he wasn't going to get me back, he stormed out. Then the next day I got a message over Facebook saying that I should get tested because he slept with any girl who would have him while he and I were together. I'm clean and have been since. And I still have the message from him to remind me of that he tried to come back into my life. Don't let him. I then changed my phone number a few days later because the calls wouldn't stop, deleted and blocked him off of Facebook, unfriended his friends and family. Then I recently found out he has sent me some messages over Facebook trying to find out how I am. I responded very harshly and said, basically, I am not interested in having you in my life. Don't contact me again. Then I blocked the account that he used. Next story. He stole my car keys and I believed I lost them. The first time I got back to my car from a movie with him while on a date. He'd left for about 20 minutes twice during the movie. He ran off as soon as the movie was over and I got back and it was parked in a different spot. Smelled like cigarettes and there were other people's clothes in it. I was so shocked I drove home and I was too scared to tell my parents because I wasn't supposed to be at the movies. It was so unbelievable, I didn't know what to say or do. The second time it happened, I asked him if I could park in his driveway because he lived right by my school and I had lost my parking privileges at the school, and he was the only person I knew so close to campus. I got back from class and my car smelled like weed. All the gas was gone. The seat was moved. I called the cops and he told them that I gave him permission. His word against mine, so they dropped it. He ended up going to jail for robbing an ATM not long after. Then he stole the remote to my family's front gate, so he had access to my house at all times. We had to get an expensive security panel installed after that. Once I told him I was leaving my house to go get coffee with my friend, and I'd forgotten something, so we drove back and I saw him walking towards my house with a duffel bag and someone I'd never seen before. The cops told me that they were familiar with him and that he was a sociopath. I had to change my phone number and was terrified for months that I would run into him again. This is all the same person. Next story. I have a couple, but I'll mention the worst. This is copy-pasted from another comment, so a few parts are unnecessary and it is long, but it's a good story if you like to read. So, just some details. I made a huge mistake 5 years ago today. The webcam community effectively saved me from many of the possible repercussions of that bad discussion. The day after I turned 16, I met this man. He was 18, and we started dating. He moved in with my family and I after a short 4 months, and later things went well, for just a little while though. Slowly but surely, he became emotionally abusive, and at times got physical with me. I was trapped at that point. Not literally, but in my mind, I thought there was no way out. He had me convinced that nobody else would want me just because he had taken my virginity from me. I put up with him cheating, hiding his phone, looking through my phone at his every whim just to criticize about anything that I may have done that would upset him, which would have been just about anything. Slowly, all of my friends got fed up with me for me choosing him over them. It wasn't my fault I let him manipulate me into that. I allowed him to treat me that way, the way that he did. I was weak, and at the time, I was too naive to realize it. All of my family told me to leave him, to find someone better, and I was too naive to realize just how right they were. After dating approximately 3 years and living together for all but the first 4 months of the relationship, I had decided that I needed a job, but I had no vehicle and lived too far out of town to walk. So I started looking at online options and I found a webcam modeling thing. At first, I wasn't sure because I am shy and modest, and honestly, I am a goody two-shoes teacher's pet nerd type. I never snuck out and partied in school, and it took me until my graduation party to drink my first beer. I didn't do drugs, and rebelling wasn't exactly my forte. Well, webcam modeling became my dirty little secret. It became hard to explain to my family and friends where all of my money had been coming from. I lied, still lie to this day, but only those in the webcam community made me feel worth something. My confidence boosted from hearing hundreds of strangers, soon to be friends, call me beautiful and expressing their desire to make me their own. Now, it may be weird, but many of them even expressed that they'd love to marry me after only seeing me half naked and talking for a few minutes. But that didn't change how it made me feel empowered. This empowerment gave me the power to leave what became an abusive relationship that I shouldn't have been in the first place. In the process of trying to leave, my boyfriend at the time had me trapped in my bedroom blackmailing me, saying he wouldn't let me leave the room until I called my mother, telling her what an effing slut I was, just because I cammed. And I never cheated on him, and I had his permission beforehand to cam in order to pay all of our bills, his and mine. He kicked me out of the apartment I paid for and proceeded to take half of my paycheck out of the ATM before I knew it was even there. For that 3 days, I lived in a city, spending a majority of my time at Walmart, attempting to sleep on benches. I cried a lot too. I thought everything was my fault because that's what he made me believe. I went back knowing I had nowhere else to go. At the time, we lived 1,000 miles away from family, and I had no friends or family nearby, not enough money for a flight or bus home. So I went back to the apartment begging him to just let me in so I could sleep in a bed. He convinced me to be his again. He guilted me into it by telling me he'd commit self-unaliving if I didn't. Our relationship was on the rocks, and eventually we got on another fight. This one ended with him kicking me out while I was half naked wearing only a robe. I had just taken a shower. I fought my way back inside to get dressed and to grab my essentials, phone, wallet, glasses, and he made me leave with nothing but those things. On my way out, he grabbed my phone and smashed it against the brick building beside our apartment. He had also punched me in the face, and that was my last straw. I decided I was leaving for good, with or without my belongings. I had no phone and no way to call for help. I had 3 maxed out credit cards, no money in the bank, and I was literally a naive 19-year-old girl. I had the clothes on my back and not much else. Then a very close regular from the camming community came to my rescue and sent me enough money for a plane ticket, train ticket to the nearest airport, and money for a taxi just so I could escape. He sent extra so I'd have money to buy food. Without him, I have no idea where I would be now. I was scared because he wasn't flying me home. I requested to go stay with him. Why? Well, my ex told my mother that I was a prostitute and also told her that I'm pansexual, which she doesn't tolerate. I was scared of my mother not wanting me back just because of those things that my ex had pounded into my head. I knew at that moment that I was worthless to everyone, so I flew to the man who I had never met, had absolutely no reason to trust, other than the fact that he's covered my rent once when I was broke and sent money for groceries whenever he knew I had none. Everyone told me I was stupid for doing it, and I probably was, but I could have been killed by my ex, or worse, been forced to live with him every day for the rest of my life. So at that point, I decided to take a risk, even if it meant potential death, SA, or torture. I thought it would be better than where I was. And my life turned out great. I'm alive, he didn't harm me, and we're actually dating now, and he is slowly but surely helping me to feel better. I still have quirky behaviors that victims of abuse have, and sometimes they bug him, but they're slowly going away. I say sorry for everything, and I'm jumpy if his arm so much as even moves in my direction unexpectedly, but I trust him, and I know he would never harm me. I just have to thank everyone in the webcam community for helping me to realize my mistake of letting such an awful man into my life, and allowing him to overpower me and make me so weak. I would also like to thank all of you for helping me feel more and more empowered each and every day. Okay, so I have a few things to say about this story. So first off, I am ultimately glad that she has removed herself from the abusive relationship. But also at the start, and let me just scroll back up here so I have this right. Yeah, the day after I turned 16, I met this man. He was 18 and we started dating. He moved in with my family and I. Girl, what? That's already a huge problem in of itself. More so on the family's part, but also I feel like this dude who picked her up, I feel like yeah, he did have good intentions, but also he's like, yes, come to me, cam girl. Out of all of the millions of dudes and even women who pay a bunch of money to some cam girl or OF girl or whatever, how many of them are like, oh man, if only I could get her to date me? And then this guy, he actually did pull it off, probably on a person who was at a very low point in their life. So yeah, it seems like OP's in a better place and recovering, but I'm also feeling like the guy kind of got away with it in a way. He may not be abusive, but I feel like he pulled off the big one. Again, OP's in a better spot, but I have mixed feelings about this story all around. But ultimately, she's out of the abusive relationship, so that's a win. But anyway, next story. So, not me, but my psycho twin. He dated a girl that he was madly in love with, but as the years went by, I witnessed him physically abusing her. One day, I was at their house and out of nowhere, for no reason, he punched her. They stayed together through his fits of insanity. Finally, though, she got tired of his crap and broke up with him, and after she found a new boyfriend, he tried to kill her by shooting an arrow at her through her glass door. She didn't get hurt and didn't press charges, though. For the next year, at every single party, he would get drunk and scream, "Amanda!" It was a bizarre thing to live through. Next story. She was slightly bipolar, but on meds, so it was fine. She was perfectly balanced. Well, she ended up slipping on some ice and effing up her back. So she went and got a steroid shot. The steroid shot really effed up the chemical balances in her brain, causing her to go manic. And I was prepared to see her through it after we figured out what happened, up until she went out and effed some other dude. I was even willing to work through it, but then she destroyed a couple of very expensive remote control planes when I confronted her, so she was gone. I dropped off all of her crap at her dad's place, and I changed the locks. Then nothing much happened for a couple of weeks, until she showed up at my work, out of the blue, and proceeded to beat the crap out of my tow truck with a claw hammer. Cops were called, she got arrested. After about a month, she called me up apologizing, and I shot her down and said I wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with someone who destroyed my otherwise mint condition 1994 F-150 that I loved dearly. She flipped and started leaving these really weird voicemails. Eventually, had to get a restraining order, and I haven't heard from her since. Next story. Was going out clubbing for a mate's birthday. She got ridiculously drunk at home while we were pre-drinking, and I told her that she should stay home as she was going to get refused entry or kicked out early, which would mean I would have to leave, and my mates would also want to come home with us, effectively ruining my mate's birthday. I said if she could walk down the hall and back, approximately 10 meters, without touching the walls, she could come, and watched her bounce from wall to wall the entire way. She seemed to agree with me at this point and went to bed, told her we would be back in a few hours and would keep partying, which she was keen for. 20 minutes later, we are leaving, and I go into our room to check on her only to find the window has been smashed and she's nowhere to be found. Me and a mate went for a run around the block to try and find her, but decided that she was just pissed and had left, and we decided to head out into town anyway. Then, coming home at 3 a.m., about 4 hours later, and found her sitting on the front doorstep pouting like a child. Let her inside, told her I didn't want to discuss what happened when we were drunk. She wanted to drive home, so I stole and hid her keys, put her in bed, and went back out to my mates. Went to sleep on the couch and told her to get the hell out in the morning when I thought she could drive home. She told me she had kicked out the window, left via the window, and hid in a tree as she had seen me and my mate looking for her. Apparently, I should have stayed home instead of going out clubbing to find her. Next story. My ex-wife turned on me after I found out I was sterile. When I came home with my diagnosis from the urologist, I went to hug her, but she pushed me aside and said, "Maybe we should just get a divorce." And from that point on, she would berate me about my condition. We would be watching a perp get arrested on the news, and she would say, "I bet he's got sperm." We'd drive by a homeless guy, and she'd say, "I bet he's got sperm." We tried a few treatments for my condition. Each time, she would say, "If this doesn't work, we're gonna get divorced." And there were other threats too. Then, one day, I decided that I would just go ahead and take care of that divorce on my own terms. I packed up my car, and I left. As I drove away, it was like the sun started to shine again. Years later, I married someone who loved me despite my condition. Her psycho ex story was that she told everyone that I abandoned her out of the blue. Next story. Very controlling ex-girlfriend started by telling who I could and couldn't talk to and hang out with. Descended into her always insulting me and being physically abusive. When we finally split and I didn't beg her to not leave me, she fabricated false charges that I broke into her house, stole some electronics and cash. I got arrested and spent 3 months in jail while I fought the charges. Subpoenaed video records of the day the alleged incident took place, and beat a residential burglary charge. Charges dropped, cut all ties to her and any third-party friends we had that are associated with her. Next story. She told me that someone she used to have a crush on years ago had gotten in contact with her and said that they wanted to be in a relationship with her, and she needed to think about it. Well, this was a lie, apparently, and I was told this purely to see how I would react. You know, would I try to keep her or what? And, well, I didn't react strongly to her. I was trying to be kinder, and the line, "Are you effing stupid? Why would you need to take a single second to think about that if you're with me?" didn't seem so kind to me. So I took a couple of days of being quiet, thinking myself into depression and major anxiety over my relationship because she felt like testing me. We broke up like a week or so later, and I was 100 times happier. Psycho manipulated B-word. Next story. I told her to leave my house after I found out she cheated. She grabbed a large knife from the kitchen and charged at me with it. I knocked it out of her hands and almost lost my finger in the process. She picked up the knife from the floor and self-harmed, and it was the deepest cut I've ever seen. I grabbed some paper towels and duct tape and wrapped her arm about 100 times. I got her in the car and drove through a snowstorm to the hospital. I dropped her off and told myself I was done with her. Still traumatized by that night. Next story. He was extremely controlling. He got mad because I wanted a donut once. The reasoning behind that is because I offhandedly said my dad had diabetes, and he was so sure I'd get it. I wasn't allowed to drink regular Sprite anymore, and I had to limit how much sugar I put in my tea, or else he'd get pissed off and either complain or ignore me. And then, when it was my 21st birthday, he was 28 at the time, he got pissed off because I wanted to go to a bar. He was projecting what he did when he was younger onto me, and I guess thought I'd get stupidly drunk and do terrible things. Then he later, after nearly 2 years together, the struggle of it being a long-distance relationship and me moving 600 plus miles from him, broke up for me with some girl that he works with. He moved her in with him after like a month or two, and they were talking about getting married, even though when I talked to him about it, he didn't believe in marriage. What a fun guy. I still am a bit heartbroken over it, but I miss the good times between us. Not how it ended, and I certainly don't miss him though. Next story. This isn't really my ex, but a friend's ex. I had a girl that I was not dating, but occasionally talked to on Yahoo Messenger, the good old days. One night I got on there and spoke to her, but it was actually him who logged in on her account. So I asked her, or I thought at the time, to come bowling with some of us, and she declined. What actually happened was the guy went to the bowling alley and followed me home. For about a month, he would knock on our door and run off before anyone could get there really late at night. The girl told me about it several months later. Ironically, we were dating at the time. Next story. I'm late to the party here, but here's a short list of the insane things my ex did. Physically assaulted me numerous times. When I tried to leave, he barred the door and started harming himself with a knife, saying he would unalive himself if I left. I socked him in the jaw to get him out of the way, broke his nose and it shocked him, and I managed to escape though. And then I ran down the street and hid. Called my dad to come and get me, and then called the crisis mental health unit and had my boyfriend sectioned. He escaped the hospital though and walked around 20 kilometers to come find me. Another time when I broke up with him and sought refuge at my parents' house, ex would call me relentlessly, as in non-stop 24/7 until I picked up. This was before iPhones, so it was a little harder to block a number. I would answer, hit mute, and record at the same time, and he would just rant and rave non-stop. I ended up showing these recordings to the police. Then he kept sending me messages saying he needed to see me and that he was coming over. I ignored him, but then the following morning at about 5 a.m., my dad couldn't sleep and went downstairs for a smoke to find my ex drunk asleep in the bushes outside. Another time, one day, a friend of my ex's called me in a panic saying he had called the police to my house and to lock the doors. My ex told his friend that he was going to kill me and had set out with a knife. Then, this all went down about 5 years ago, but every 6 months on the day, he finds a way to send me a message, usually just, "You'll never know who I am, but you're a terrible, evil person," type stuff. And he did all of these things to multiple other women. We have a Facebook group to warn each other if he ever makes contact. Next story. He stole my prescription medication and refused to give it back until I got back together with him. I told my other brother, who convinced him to stop. He harassed me at work for over an hour. He knew there was no other employees in the store. He called my cell endlessly until I blocked him. Then he started calling my job's phone, threatened to come in and cause a scene to get me fired once a manager arrived if I didn't speak to him. I had no way of blocking him, and if I didn't answer the phone, the computer would log a missed call. So after the 30th call or so, I just kept picking it up and hanging it up straight away rather than speaking to him. Was too scared to call the cops, and I told my other brother, and he convinced my ex to stop. Then he threatened to take his own life if I didn't get back together with him. I asked if he was serious, and he said yes. So I finally worked up the courage to call the police on him. They took him to the hospital. He was there for 3 hours. They decided it was a panic attack and released him, and the harassment continued as soon as he was out. This was all in one day, by the way. Then he endlessly harassed my friends, lied to them, would message them in the middle of the night, send them hundreds of messages a day. He threatened me with, "If I ever see you with anyone else, you won't be so pretty anymore, and the guy is gonna regret talking to you." And he would talk crap about me to anyone that would listen, would lie about why we broke up, called me a bunch of horrible words, anything he could think of, did the same on social media. I told my grandmom, and she had him delete the posts. He called me once he found out I made a Tinder, by seeing me on his own Tinder, used his friend's phone to call me, and was literally screaming at me for being a W word. He ended up punching a hole in his wall or harming himself, I don't know. He had different stories for how it happened, even if it happened at all. Then, one night he announced he was coming over to my place, relayed the message through a friend. He knew my dad's work schedule and knew I would be home alone. Luckily, I was staying over at a friend's house that night. I had to call him and tell him to leave me alone. A few days later, he again, knowing my dad's work schedule, knew I would be home alone. And I was. Unfortunately, he announced he was on his way over, that we were going to talk it out and do what it takes to get back together. With all of his previous behavior, this terrified me. I started having a severe panic attack, worst one I've ever had, and I told him to leave me alone. I didn't want to talk to him. We weren't getting back together, but he said he didn't care, was coming over anyway. Even when I was crying hysterically, barely able to breathe from my panic attack, he insisted that since he has my favorite food, I'll be fine. I got in my car and I bolted. Sat in a grocery store parking lot because I was so scared he would find me if I went to a friend's or a relative's. I called my mom, and once I calmed down enough, I went to a police station and got a temporary restraining order. Then, in court, the judge decided I didn't qualify for a permanent restraining order because even though he admitted to all of his behavior and had qualified legally as domestic abuse on multiple levels, the lack of physical violence means I don't qualify for a permanent restraining order. So, essentially, he needs to hit me before I can prevent him from hitting me. So, I'm very proud of our legal system. Then 3 days after court, he messaged me again. He's made fake Facebook accounts, messaged me on absolutely every platform he could think of. Every once in a while, I find a message from him on some website that I haven't used in a while, and it F's me up all over again. I just block him there and then I move on. Next story. This is from a friend who this happened to, but he had a year-long relationship where we were in college that was one of those disaster relationships. She was hot, they had lots of sex, and he was hooked, but they constantly had knockdown dragouts. Finally, he broke it off with her, though. Well, she responded by getting in her car when he left and chasing him down. He got to his dad's house where he was going to stay and literally parked outside and spent hours calling and texting him in excess of 150 times. She eventually stopped, so he assumed she left. He went to bed. His room was in the basement, but had like windows up at the top near the ceiling, and this was around 2 a.m. He wakes up to a commotion, though. She was kicking on one of the windows. She was kicking it in, actually, and she eventually broke in and started attacking, throwing crap all over and kicking and hitting him. His dad heard and came down and went off on her. Eventually, the police were called. She left peacefully, and eventually, but damn! The next guy she hooked up with, she sent pictures of her effing him to my buddy, though, which was weird. Next story. Dated a guy who was verbally and emotionally abusive for about 8 months. Broke up with him numerous times, but he always threatened me, so I caved. Finally broke it off for good, and he tried to break into my apartment and almost broke down the door. Called the cops and went through the process of getting a restraining order. After the serving of the RO notice, he stalked me and sent me threatening messages, along with leaving voicemails of calls we had months ago, but ultimately got thrown out for lack of physical violence. Also, forgot to mention that he had a ton of guns and threatened to take his own life, get me fired from my job, and ruin the lives of everybody I cared about. Next story. So, my ex and I worked in a similar field that you can only get hired by knowing someone. There's no such thing as an application, interview, or hiring process. You show up in whatever state at the job trailer and fill out your hire packet and go to work. You don't even meet the people you're working for until the next tailgate meeting. Well, my ex and I had a very bad breakup. He threatened to SA me, destroy my life, and spread rumors in our almost all-male industry about me about being an S-word. 6 months after the breakup, my company went bankrupt and I moved 2 states away. He emailed me and told me his boss on a new project wanted me and to send him my resume to pass along. Against my better judgment, I moved back when he told me the company wanted me to be their new office manager. After spending my last $2,000 to move back, I couldn't get a hold of my ex. 2 weeks later, I get an email telling me his boss looked at my Facebook and thought I was trashy and unprofessional and didn't want me after all. Though, knowing my ex was absolutely full of crap, I called one of the only vendors of supplies in the area for what we do, pretended to be the office manager, and requested an invoice that my ex had signed. From there, I got the name of the company he was working for. I called their corporate office, found out who was working in the field, contacted their project manager, and got myself hired. The look on my ex's face when he saw me on my first day was priceless. He was so ashamed and so embarrassed for himself. And I got promoted the next day. And I was in a position to fire him at any time for any reason. I didn't, but it felt good. And he never apologized, and he told everyone on the job that he was the one who got me hired. Next story. Alright, here we go. This is a long one and I'm still pretty pissed about it. So I met this guy, I think I was 17, 16, since I'm pretty shy IRL, and I prefer to sit at home and be antisocial anyway. We talked and talked every single day. We'd fall asleep on Skype together, and we'd constantly be texting or messaging or playing games together. Now, I did an online school thing for my last 2 years of high school, so I was almost always home, thus always interacting with him. He had a job where he was able to respond back to me constantly. So things start off pretty normal, at least they seemed normal. We grow closer and closer, and eventually fall in love or something like that. He agrees we should meet. He lived in Canada, and I lived in California. So he flies out, as I'm still underage at the time, and we meet up. He takes me on a proper date. We go to dinner, go shopping, go see a movie. Everything's wonderful. He visits me a total of 7 times or something like that over the span of a year. Every other month for a weekend at a time. Usually, occasionally staying for a week or more. We grow closer, and I start to notice he's pretty controlling and needing. Young me is thinking, oh, he's just needy and I have all the time in the world, so I don't mind. He just loves me. So eventually, I graduate and end up visiting my very, very ill grandmother in the Midwest. My mother and I drove there together and we stayed with her and my grandpa. During this time, my boyfriend decides that it's time for me to visit him. I hadn't yet because I didn't have a passport. I hadn't even told my parents about him. He starts pressuring me to tell my parents and get my passport ASAP because he wants me to come see him as soon as I turn 18. I tell him I'm still trying to find a way to tell my mom, and I already told her I'd like to get a passport. I just needed her to take me to the passport agency or something. And this is all happening while my grandmother is dying, mind you, so he's pressuring me to do all of this right now, ASAP. As my grandmother started getting sicker and sicker, however, my mom decided that she wants me to move back to the Midwest so she can be close to family. And I really want to as well. I was never fond of California, and I was ready to move as soon as she was. But my boyfriend decided that wasn't going to happen because he didn't like my mom. He decided that I would be living with my dad because my dad knew about him and he liked my dad. And I have a very, very bad relationship with my father due to other unfortunate circumstances that my boyfriend was well aware of. Now, I was sobbing the whole drive back to California with my mom because I didn't want to leave her. She told me that this was crazy and that I should just go with her and warned me not to trust my dad. I hugged her so tight when she left. My family is not particularly touchy-feely, so I remember the hug really, really well. It was the last one for a long time. So I stay in California and start going to college 3 times a week. My dad lived in a trailer park at the time, so it was a little rough and we were always broke, but I really enjoyed college, so I stayed. I lost contact with my mom, probably because I was terrified she was disappointed in me. Then I get a call from my mom, and my grandmother had died. She asked me to come out for the funeral and told me she would pay for the ticket, but I was terrified that she hated me. I didn't go, and that is honestly the biggest regret I've ever had in my entire life. It destroyed me. I got severely depressed and eventually broke up with my boyfriend. My energy was gone, my will to live was gone, everything was gone. But my boyfriend didn't take the breakup so well. He demanded we get back together. I repeatedly told him no, however. I told him to leave me alone. He kept calling and calling though, and just calling some more. He wouldn't stop. Eventually, he flew out to see me. When the Border Patrol called me and asked if I had arranged plans to see him, I told them no, and that I didn't want him near me. They turned him away at the border. I'm absolutely terrified of what would have happened if they let him in and didn't confirm with me. Then everything else happened. I made a lot of personal mistakes due to my depression and a crumbling home life. My dad and I got evicted from our trailer park and we started sleeping in hotel rooms. My ex and my dad were still close, so my ex bought us nights at a few motels, but I slept mostly in the car. I also spent a lot of time at a local land center with some friends just hanging out. I'd never have a day go by without me being thankful for them, so if you were one of the regulars at BR in San Diego, I love you and thank you. Then some more crap happens and my dad and I have a falling out. He hits me, I leave, and I stay with some friends. And I have some interesting stories from this time too, but I won't go into it now. But my ex, he gets winds of this and invites me to Canada to stay with him. I am just hopelessly lost at this point. Homeless, broke, and alone in a state far away from my mom. So yes, I fly up there, and we eventually get back together after a lot of convincing from him, and he was a great manipulator. I lived with him, his dad, and his brother in Canada for about a year. We fought a lot because he was awful. He treated me like a live-in slave. He lost his job and he was home all the time. He demanded sex constantly and demanded I cook and clean to earn my keep. And I didn't know what to do. I was scared. Eventually, I go home to visit my mom after finally reaching out to her, and she convinces me to leave him and come home. So I do. I leave him. Huge weight was lifted from my shoulders. Only problem is that he has my very expensive gaming computer. He says he'll give me the computer back if I come back to Canada for a weekend because he doesn't want to ship it. I reluctantly agree and he books a flight with no return flight because he's convinced that he'll win me back. So I get there and everything seems normal. We get back to the hotel and he makes me withdraw all the money in my bank account, threatening me. He brings me up to our room and shows me an engagement ring. Says we're going to get married and he's moving to the States. I tell him he's effing crazy. So he forces me to wear the ring, takes a crap ton of pictures, and sends it to all of my friends as proof. He takes my phone, which I can only use on Wi-Fi anyway, and then demands we have sex. I tell him no, and that the relationship is over. Then he says, and I crap you not, well, can we at least shower together one last time? And I tell him to F off and take off downstairs. He's not having any of that though, and physically keeps me in the room. Then he says, okay, fine. If you don't want me, then fine. We'll book you a flight, but your computer's at my mom's house, which is about 15 minutes away. So we take a cab to his mom's house, and as we roll up, he confesses that it's not there. I hop out of the cab immediately and start walking away towards other people. And then I throw a huge, well-placed temper tantrum, screaming and crying about how I want to go home, and some guys call the police for me. Thank you, trucker guy in Calgary by Starbucks. Then the police show up and ask me for my ID and what's happening. And this MF stole my passport. Police officer demands he give me my phone back, and he tells him to F off, basically. So he takes me to a woman's shelter where I spend a few nights and get in contact with my mom. She buys me a flight home, and eventually he ships me my computer as an apology. TLDR, I don't leave the house anymore. Alright, I just want to give a mildly gushing review over this story. First off, I'm happy that OP is out of the abusive relationship, but if you ever tell a story, this is how you tell a story on Reddit. I would give this a 7, 7.5. Some details got skimmed over, but it was pretty long, so I get wanting to skip over some details. But the gist of it is there. It explains things. It gives time to breathe. This is how you tell a story. Some people are so bad at it. You've seen it. You've heard it. You've witnessed it. My eyeballs have bled over it, but good job, OP, on all accounts. But anyway, next story. So, not so much an ex, as things between us had just started about a week prior, but we went to a party and she flirted with one of my friends the whole time, who was having none of it, by the way, halfway through which she told me, we're not having sex tonight. Fine, I'll just drop any worry about whiskey weighing and have a good time. So the party winds down and we end up sleeping near each other, but nothing happened, and I'm not gonna go after someone that's disinterested in me. A few days later, I get off work and see a message from her that turned out to be incomprehensible screaming. I sent a text asking if she was okay, hoping she had calmed down, but she calls me and starts right back up, telling me how I'm a coward and how her friend is telling her that I SA'd her at the party. We talk and argue for a while, and I end up telling her how stupid she is for believing the friend who wasn't even at the party, telling her she was SA'd by someone who slept on a couch, and then I hung up. Thankfully, I never heard from her again, but damn, if thinking back to that doesn't give me the heebie-jeebies. Next story. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart when I was in college. Everyone told me I was crazy and needed to experience more before I got married, but I was convinced I found the one. She was a band geek and I was a football player. I'm a stocky white guy and she was a skinny Asian girl. Well, our first year at college, we went to separate colleges, she made quite a few poor decisions to say the least. Going out to random clubs and dancing with random guys, then telling me weeks later because she felt guilty. Admitting that she lied about where she was a lot, and eventually cheating on me while drunk on a cruise with her family during the summer. She said all of these things because she wasn't sure if she loved me, and I eventually forgave her. Fast forward 2 years, and she had transferred to my college to finish her bachelor's. We lived together for the year before she left again for pharmacy school. While we were living together, it felt more distant than it ever had, but I didn't realize it at the time. When she left me again, she got very suspicious of me and thought I was cheating on her. I gave her no reason to believe I would do anything of the sort. I went to visit her almost every other week, living about 3 hours away. There were even times where I spent the money I had for food on going to see her instead. She barely came to see me that year at all and started becoming more distant. Whenever we went out, she would also keep tabs on who paid and wrote everything down that she paid for. It was getting really awkward for me because I didn't know why she was acting like that. There were even times she accused me of cheating, and I felt really hurt. One weekend, I came to visit and we were hanging out with my best friend, who went to the same college that she was now attending, his wife, and 2 of his college friends. My ex spent almost the entire night talking to one of his friends and ignoring me. It got really awkward and I pulled her aside to confront her about it. She got extremely upset, disappeared for about 20 minutes, then came back and gave me the silent treatment until we got back to her place, and she cried while telling me how much of an a-hole I was for what I said. I left the next morning instead of that night so we could spend more time together, and she didn't even say goodbye to me. This is a woman I was with for almost a third of my life at this point, and I wasn't feeling very good. About a week later, she told me over a text that she couldn't do it anymore. I didn't even reply to the text. I left my class I was in and drove down to see her. She opened the door and didn't say a word for almost an hour, then took off her ring and handed it to me. She said she still loved me, but it hurt too much to be with me. I was so confused, but after a few more hours of crying and asking still unanswered questions, I left. She even had the balls to tell me she thought I was cheating on her. I found out 2 weeks later that the same night, she spent the night with the guy from the previously mentioned dinner. I knew this because my best friend was hanging out at his apartment that night and saw her go into this guy's room and F his brains out. I later learned that they had been hooking up for months, and all of the suspicion she laid on me was because of her guilt from being the one cheating. There's a lot more to it, but honestly, it hurts to even bring it up again, so I'm gonna end it there. But you can get the basic idea. Next story. Oh, my time to shine. So let's see, 3 months into dating, he got mad at me because I wouldn't let him get frisky with me in the grocery store. Then he binged drank and gave me the silent treatment. I went home but woke up to a text at 4 a.m. of a photo of freshly sliced slashes on himself. Had to have been over 10, 15 cuts. Then he used to make me watch him bite his arm until he broke his skin off. Sick as F. Then at a work Christmas party, he got crap-faced drunk and tried to convince me and another coworker to participate in a threesome. But when I declined angrily, he stormed out of the bar, started walking in the middle of the street, and just disappeared. I showed up to his house hours later after frantically searching for his drunk ass, and I quickly collected my things and tried to get out, but he proceeded to throw his Christmas tree out of the front door along with a big screen TV, which he paid for, and all of the things associated with our relationship. Continuing, on my 21st birthday, he got so crap-faced that I had to be the designated driver. After 2 years of off and on dating, his choice of a great birthday gift was a pair of my favorite football team's socks. Every single vacation was ruined by him getting drunk and threatening to call his ex. Did I mention he's a male stripper, by the way? And the list, it just goes on and on. Poor guy's a raging alcoholic, and even though I never want to see him again, I do hope he finds happiness. I've found mine, and I've learned from that relationship greatly. But Jesus F, did I put up with some effed up crap. Next story. Oh boy, it's my time to shine. So I will name all of the people I have met in my 31 years. One girl threatened to unalive herself and blame her death on me, and she told all of my friends that she was pregnant with my kid, which did not go well because they wanted proof. Another one shot out my pickup truck's windows and wrote a note in what I hope was red paint saying, "We're perfect for each other, come back to me." Another abusive girl came and threw a Molotov cocktail at my neighbor's house and blamed it on me, which did not go well for her. One hired someone to SA her and blame it on me. Again, no proof of me being involved. Then a narcissist girl talked bullcrap about me to her family, which led to vandalism, arson, burglary, attempted murder, slander, false reports, and hit and runs. And the worst? One girl came into my house while I was sleeping and stood in front of my bed and took effing pictures of me, took off my pants and stuck my genitals in her, and then proceeded to perform oral on me. I called the cops. She was arrested and charged for breaking and entering. Okay, so she probably should have been charged for more than breaking and entering because what she committed was assault in the sexual form. So that's kind of awful and frustrating and disappointing. I've also been disappointed with the flimsy reasonings for the restraining orders. Well, he didn't try to kill you yet, so we can't really give you the restraining order. Get out of here, bro. Also, I would like to wager that this is a lot of toxic, crazy people. Maybe OP just has a blind spot for these type of women. That's also a possibility. But anyway, next story. So, the first girlfriend I ever had was when I was 21. She was totally my type. Sweet, Chinese girl with smooth, clean feet. Anyway, we hadn't been dating for 2 weeks before she asked me about marriage. And she was dead serious. Being as inexperienced as I was, I sort of went along with it until my mom brought me to reality and I broke up with her. She also did other weird things like let her parents stay over in our apartment for weeks on end, and her refusal to properly wash Tupperware after it had been used. Not to mention all of the freaky stuff she did in bed, which I only realized was freaky now looking back with more experience. Next story. Got home from work, hop in the shower. About 5 minutes later, I hear the door open, and a big mixing bowl full of ice water is dumped on my head over the curtain. He throws the shower curtain open, shuts off the water, and begins to yell, "Did I say you could could shower, you dumb S-word, get out! And then boots me outside in nothing but a towel and locks the door behind me. I could hear him laughing inside. Thank goodness, though, my neighbor was home, who's a coworker and friend, and she let me inside her place to dry off and give me some clothes to wear. To this day, I still have no clue what his issues were. And trust me when I say there were countless other issues that we had. Next story. My ex was severely abusive. It started off very gradual and was to the point where I was isolated from my family and friends, being locked in closets and bedrooms, eating off of the floor, beaten with extension cords, all kinds of crazy things. The last straw was he had thrown me into a wall and he literally had to pull me out of the wall and was choking me out on the ground. Right before I was about to pass out, his friend Dave walked in and got me out of there, and I never went back. I'm free now, and I'm safe and happy, and I always say they could have made a Lifetime movie about that 5 years of my life. Next story. I lived with a girlfriend for over 8 months after being with her for nearly a year. I acquired a cat during that time. I found her in a tree and decided to pay for her vet trips and food and keep her as a pet. The thing to make clear is that she was not our cat, but my cat. The ex had her own that she cared deeply about. Well, I broke up with her. This was a 9-hour ordeal for which her mother skipped work to be a part of, and she repeatedly tried to take her own life throughout. I would have left if she hadn't slammed a door on me hard enough to have me limping too slowly to leave without them both following me, which they said they would do. After packing up my belongings in the following days, I told her I need a few more days to prepare for my cat to live elsewhere, and she said this was fine. When I arrived to pick up my cat, she and her parents called the police because they were our landlords. They believed that they owned the cat because they had given me permission to own her. I left after a long talk with the police, which ended in them saying it is very clearly my cat, I had all my paperwork showing so, and that they were very sorry that they didn't have the right to kick the door down to get her, and that I had to take them to court. I sued them the next week. Now, court processes are slow, and I plead with my ex to please give her back. She said she couldn't and didn't want to be involved, and that she hadn't done anything wrong. She told her parents to stop me from retrieving my cat. Then, in a last-ditch effort to not have this go to court, I told her I would show up at her house at 7:30 a.m., and that if she didn't let me in, I would leave, but I would be there if she was willing to talk. She let me in and talked crazy for 30 minutes about how me breaking up with her was the best thing that ever happened to her, and at other times in the conversation, how she would fight to get me back until she was dead. She would strip naked at this time and begged me to F her raw, claiming she was certain she wouldn't get pregnant. I refused. This whole time, I just wanted her to give me my cat, who she had locked upstairs. She said I could see her for a minute. I told her that if she let me hold her, I would leave with her, and she wouldn't be able to stop me. Perfectly within my right, by the way. She is without a doubt my property. This is not an issue of a couple getting a pet together. She then eventually tried harder to bargain for the wiener and suggested that she will let me see my cat if I F her without a condom afterwards. I said, sure. So she went upstairs to get her, and I placed my cat carrier near the door while she was gone. As soon as I had her, I ran. Outside, while I was putting her in the carrier, my ex tackled me, still naked, in the street. A tug-of-war ensued once my cat was in the carrier, and I just kept screaming, "Don't hurt her!" As she fought for the carrier like her life depended on it, her mother was in the house and came out to her naked daughter fighting me for my cat. They tagged out and I had to pry my ex's mother's fingers off of my cat carrier. Then, after numerous calls saying the police were after me and waiting for me at me and my friends' houses, that the ex was going to unalive herself, a text from the mother saying that now I had to live with myself after she takes her life, and a discussion with the police to ensure that they weren't after me, I thought it was over. I ended my suit with them. I had no interest in seeing these people ever again. I had my cat back, and that's all that mattered anymore. I had recorded both the conversation with the police originally and the baked sex begging encounter with my iPhone voice memos. I had all the documentation showing that the cat belonged to me and no one else. Then I received a summons for $10,000 from the family a week later. After seeking legal counsel and compiling the evidence I had, it was clear they had no case and were lucky I wasn't pressing charges. I skipped a lot of the details that include many of the numerous laws my ex and her parents broke throughout this process, though. It's a more complicated story than I have laid out here. I didn't mention them harassing my family, forging my signatures on court documents, and assaulting me numerous times. Laws that are in place to protect people from exactly this type of harassment. Illegally withheld property is identical to theft in my state's laws. Then her father showed up to the first court date and they backed out before the second. He seemed amazed I actually had put a case together. He told a version of the story where he paid for the cat and it was his. This very directly contradicted the also not true story he told the police originally, which I had recorded, and they are very lucky they didn't show up. Her mother asked for monthly updates about my cat's well-being to ensure I am taking care of her. This now, though, is thankfully behind me. My cat is very happy. She had always been harassed by the ex who would pin her down and snuggle her when she just growled. She used to run away from the ex. She has never been more affectionate now, though. Next story. I dated a guy that was into esotericism and things like that. He was into Freemasonry, groups, Templars, and God knows what else. He liked to brag about the rituals they did and showed me the clothes they had to wear. Capes, masks, and other things. We dated in summer of 2012, and mosquitoes, they like my skin, and so I had a lot of mosquito bites. He wanted to convince me that it was the job of some kind of gray alien that enjoyed to abduct me during the night. Then we broke up because I didn't want to move to Australia before 12/12/12. Apparently, someone in his groups convinced him that Australia was supposed to be the only place that would survive the 2012 end of the world thing. But before landing in Australia, the plan was to go to Egypt and conceive a kid inside of a pyramid, because astrologically that day and that place have some kind of esoteric meaning, and so we would have a kid with superpowers. Next story. I hit it off with this guy. He dumped his girlfriend, and a month later, we went on a class trip to New York. We began going out. His ex went nuts and called the cops on him. Called him a predator. We were 16. His family had major issues. His father had called the cops on him and also beat him when he was a child. He ended up being a casual, racist, manipulative person, got expelled for having a knife, a socio/psychopath, told me he could probably take a human life and not feel anything, took my virginity, and then never spoke to me again. I guess he works at Walmart now. Also is known to roam my work late at night, when I'm not there, thankfully. Next story. Went out with this girl for a few months. At the start, her stepdad threatened, and I don't think this is a false threat, to literally kill me if I screwed her over. Then she starts bringing up marriage after a month or two. Okay, no big deal, I can live with that. I didn't take her seriously. Then she starts bringing up her dead dad and dog a lot. And I mean a lot. And look, I get it, people get attached, but Jesus, it was insane. Just when things would get heated in the middle of movies, randomly on walks, etc., etc. It was very, very weird. Final straw was the voices in her head telling her to hurt herself and do other stuff too, which I won't get into, along with her developing a codependence on me that made me feel like crap because she would load me with all of her problems and not take any of my advice, or talk to anyone, or get help. She also threatened to take her own life before and after the breakup. Then she managed to get her sister to try and nearly start a fight. She then also tried to turn my friends against me, which didn't go well for her. Next story. I had met this guy on a website. It wasn't really a dating website, but a site to meet and make new friends. We hung out a couple of times, then I decided that we would go out. After being together for about 2 weeks or so, I had found out that he had a girlfriend. He gave me this big story about how they weren't really together anymore and that he was breaking it off with her on New Year's, a few days anyway. And I don't know why, but I seemed to be okay with it at the time, and they broke up. A couple of months later, I realized that I don't really know this guy, but I've opened up to him a lot about a lot of things. So I asked him to tell me more about himself and to try and open up to me. And he said he didn't really like to talk about himself and that I should just drop the subject. Big red flag. Not too long after, he texts me to say he can't come visit me for the weekend because someone from his past, who he thought was dead, had suddenly come back to town and, I quote, kicked me so hard in the shin I thought he'd break it, so I don't want to risk him following me to your town and hurting you to get to me. I told him I was done and that I wanted nothing to do with him. Then after a week of him trying to contact me and my ignoring him, he sends me a text telling me to read the email he sent me. In the email, he goes on about how a couple of years back he was supposedly in a gang, wanted to get out, and the only way they would let him out is if he played Russian roulette with another person. He apparently did, and supposedly won and walked out free. There was other bullcrap, but that's the one thing that I really remember from it. I tell him that my mind is made up and that I'm done with his crap for good. Then about a week later, I found out that my best friend at the time had started seeing him, and a week after that, I find out she was pregnant with his kid. Takes longer than 2 weeks after sex to find out you're pregnant, by the way. TLDR is, dated a crazy guy who cheated on his girlfriend for me, kept his life secret from me, then made up a crazy lie of a life and cheated on me with my best friend and knocked her up. Next story. Alright, so I've got a couple. One guy kept me in a relationship by threatening self-unaliving. After a few months, I broke up with him anyway after informing his friends and calling a crisis line to check on him. Then he started sending me self-harm threats on Facebook, which I screenshotted and sent to his mother. Haven't heard from him since. 2. Different guy. We broke up in 2009-ish, maybe early 2010. He came onto my closed college campus a couple of times. He wasn't attending, and eventually had to be banned after sneaking into the dorms. But then he kept doing it. Campus security and I went to the police. The cop was in his amateur theater group, so nothing happened, though. I moved to a different dorm, then off campus, then to a different apartment. And then, 2 years later, Mr. 3-day-old unrefrigerated pizza for breakfast is at the Wednesday Farmers Market, scanning the other people there and standing at the only exit. I didn't manage to sneak past him. Packed that night, finished up work until my contract was up on Friday, and moved to a new city an hour's drive away some Friday night in 2012. So, 2 days later, because I saw his car slowly driving up and down my street. He occasionally emails an old address or tries to text me. I save copies in a folder in case I go missing, and he's done so over the course of the last 4 years, and I never respond. A couple of months ago, he emailed my father trying to get a hold of me, and I have no idea how he got that info. Maybe off of LinkedIn after he made a new account to follow me again, after I blocked the old ones, I don't know. And now he works within 8 minutes drive of where I work, or within 20 minutes drive of my apartment. I really don't want to have to move again. FML. Next story. Alright, so I posted this the other day, but I got into my first relationship at 16. I was painfully shy while growing up and had never even kissed a boy. I met Alec through my best friend Ella, and I could tell right away that he liked me. And I was flattered because boys had never shown interest in me before. Ella warned me not to get too close to him because he had some problems. Whoever has known a 16-year-old to follow love advice, though. So he asked me out, and 2 days later, my best friend of 11 years, Lily, took her own life. I was devastated and turned into a shell of my former self. On the day she died, Lily was supposed to come over to my house after school. Now, she didn't like Alec and asked if he was coming over too. I told her that he was, and she told me that she wouldn't come over. She ended up taking her life right after she got home from school, and I still feel guilty about it 8 years later. Then summer had just started, and to help me deal with the pain, Alec introduced me to drugs, pot and ecstasy to those who are curious, and I filled the gaping wound that her sudden death inflicted on my heart with substance abuse. My sister had moved out, and my mom was working 2 jobs at the time. My mom didn't want me to be alone, so she gave Alec free reign to be at our house whenever. She meant well, but that decision, it was a disaster. He took her up on the offer and moved into my room. Alec would bring over friends constantly, trash our house, and eat our food. I was too numb/happy to be distracted from my pain/happy to be included for once to really do anything about it. My belongings kept going missing, and Alec would convince me that I had just misplaced them. He would mysteriously always have money for drugs, though, even though he was jobless. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until much further down the road, even though I know he stole from other people. About 2 weeks into our relationship, a group of his friends came over to my house while my mom was at work. The conversation turned to sex, and they asked me if I had effed Alex yet. I was a virgin at the time. I admitted to it. His friends berated me and told me I was a frigid B-word for being a wang tease to Alec. They told me that if I was serious about dating, I needed to have sex with them, that I owed it to him for taking care of me when I needed it most. Alec joined in and started begging for sex. After enough hounding, I finally caved, and they told me to F him right then. He took me into my bedroom, and I lost my virginity with his friends hooting and cheering right outside the door. Alec went back out to join them, and I stayed in my room and cried until everyone else left. Then, out of the blue, he gave me a kitten. He abused this poor thing, and by the end of our relationship, Kitty was terrified of any men that he met. Alec would throw Muffin across the room, spin him in circles, and then throw him, toss him down the stairs, throw him into the snow, throw him into water, hit him, etc. He also had an ecstasy party at my house a few times when my mom and I weren't there. He intentionally passed around the 10-week-old kitten so he would get contact high. The abuse goes on, and it breaks my heart to even list it. But Muffin did get pretty sweet revenge one day by dive-bombing Alec from the top of the fridge and scratching the crap out of his face and back, though. That was hilarious. Then, sometimes in the mornings, I would have to wake up to him essaying me. I would try to push him off of me, but he would continue to go and just beg me for sex. He would make excuses that he was almost done, and I would be a B-word for denying him at this point. And I was so emotionally effed up that I would just let him continue because the 2 minutes of SA was easier to tolerate than an entire day of him begging for sex and making me into the villain for trying to get him to stop SAing me. He also never used a condom. I'm lucky that I never ended up pregnant or with an STD. I learned later from a friend that he wanted me to get pregnant, so I would never leave him. Then, for a while, Alex tried to get into selling weed and ecstasy. He had $300 worth of E stolen from him, and he was panicking. We were both friends with the lady who he was selling from, but she could be downright terrifying when angry. So he broke down crying about how she would kill him, and I ended up paying her the money he owed. I never saw a dime of that money back. He was also a piece of crap and noticed that the Costco aspirin in my medicine cabinet looked exactly like ecstasy and even had little hearts stamped into it. So he sold those to as many people as possible for $15 a pop. Then I wanted to get rid of my laptop, and he told me a family member wanted to buy it for $200. I let him take care of the sale, and he told me his uncle was short and couldn't pay this week. I liked his family, and they were good people, so I was okay with it. A week later, I asked Alec about the money, and he said he had already spent it. He told me he thought I was giving it to him for taking such good care of me. Continuing, he also constantly effed with my head. He told me that if I ever left him, he would unalive himself. He said I was the only good thing to ever happen to him, and if anyone ever hurt me, they would turn up dead. If we would fight, he would say he would just unalive himself to save me the heartache. Because of Lily's death, I would jump to his defense and drop whatever I was mad at to make him feel better. He was great at making me feel terrible for confronting him about the bullcrap that he pulled. He also told me that if I left, he would take Muffin. Towards the end of our relationship, that changed to him killing Muffin. Honestly, there were times that I almost left him, but those threats made me stay. Then once when we were in the car with one of his friends that had recently gotten out of prison, Alec told me that if he got arrested and I didn't bail him out, he would punish me. He said that as soon as he got out, he would tie me up and S.A. me for hours. He and his friend thought that was pretty funny. I just told him that I would bail him out even though I didn't have a job at the time. Then Ella had been begging me for months to break up with him. He pushed away everyone positive in my life and replaced them with thieves and a-holes. I tried a few times to break up with him, but he would say he would take his own life if I left him. Eventually, after 8 months of this bullcrap, I finally found my backbone and I ended it. He sobbed and begged me to take him back, but I just showed him the door and told him not to return. And now I'm still effed emotionally and have a lot of hang-ups about sex and relationships. I didn't date anyone for 3 years after Alec because I was terrified of someone using me like that again. I've been with my current boyfriend for 5 years now, and he is helping to heal my damaged heart. I've told him a bit about how craptastic my first relationship was, and he is incredibly understanding. Then I still have Muffin if anyone is worried. He isn't as skittish anymore because my SO has healed a lot of the damage Alec did. Muffin is the sweetest, cuddliest cat I have ever met, and it just breaks my heart thinking about how much friendlier he would be if the first 8 months of his life had been different. I tried to protect Muffin as best as I could, but I wasn't home all the time, and I still hold a lot of guilt about that too. Well, everyone, we have made it at the end of the very long video. We make these long because we love you. I love you. Also, I love me today because I got a haircut and I tried like the mustache goatee combo, and I'm looking pretty fine today. So I love me. A lot of love going around, but holy crap was this video long. All right, so I don't know, comment, press the like button or something. What about the hype button? Is that on this video? I don't know. I don't really use that. But anyway, you made it to the end, so you were awesome for that. I love you. This is not AI, but thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and have a good one. Bye-bye.